Good evening and welcome to the February 8, 2022 work session of the Gaston County Board of Commissioners. My name is Chad Brown, the engineer, and I serve as the chairman of the board as well as the commissioner of the Riverbend Township. I would like to welcome our viewers and thank Spectrum Cable and AT&T for making it possible for our citizens. For our television audience, I would like to present the Gaston County Commission, beginning on my far right.
Alan Fraley, Cherville Township.
Good evening, I'm Ronnie Worley, South Point Township.
Good evening, folks. Bob Hovis, Craters Mountain Township.
Kim Johnson, Gastonia Township.
Good evening, Tom Kigger, Gastonia Township.
Thank you. At this time, I will call for Commissioner Hovis to give a proclamation to proclaim the month of February 2022 as Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. Commissioner Hovis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, folks. I believe we have someone here from the shelter some folks here from the shelter to join me, please. Thank you. Thank you. This right here is great. And this is referencing Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. Whereas females between the ages of 16 to 24 are more vulnerable to intimate partner violence, and whereas one in three adolescents in the U.S. is victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner, a figure that far exceeds rates of any other type of youth violence. And whereas violent relationships in adolescence can have serious ramifications by putting the victims at a higher risk of substance abuse, poor performance in school, eating disorders, risky sexual behavior, and further domestic violence. And whereas only 33% of teens who are in a violent relationship never told anyone about the abuse. And whereas the dating violence can take place in person or electronically, and whereas by providing young people with education about healthy relationships and relationship skills and changing attitudes that support violence, we recognize that dating violence can be prevented. And whereas it is essential to raise community awareness so that we may recognize when youth are exhibiting signs of dating violence, and whereas the establishment of Teen Dating Awareness Month will benefit young people, their families, schools, and communities, and whereas everyone has the right to a safe and healthy relationship and to be free from abuse. Now therefore be it resolved that the Gaston County Board of Commissioners proclaim the month of February 2022 as Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and urges all citizens to work towards ending teen dating violence by empowering young people to develop healthier relationships, assisting victims in accessing the information and supportive services they need, and engaging in discussion with family members and peers to promote awareness and prevention. This to be adopted the 22nd day of February 2022. And if you'd like to speak, please.
I just wanted to say on behalf of Hope United Survivor Network and survivors in Gaston County, thank you so much for your support and for this proclamation. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Certificates and appreciation for public service. It is a great pleasure for the Gaston County Commissioners to honor citizens who have unselfishly given of their time, talent, skills, and energies in service as an appointee to one of our boards or commissions. This type of service is the foundation for citizen involvement in our county government and is helping shape the future of our community. We gratefully acknowledge the work of the following individuals, and a certificate of appreciation has been forwarded to them. Rudy Pomeroy, Equalization and Review Board; Miles Hamrick, Gaston County Board of Adjustments; and Andrew Shagg, Juvenile Crime Prevention Council.
Thank you. At this time, next thing I will do is citizens recognition. Our next item of citizens recognition is a portion of the board's agenda is set aside for the purpose of allowing citizens an opportunity to offer comments and suggestions. This comment period is intended to require the commission or staff not to answer any questions, but also have a response provided from the county manager's office during this time. Citizens recognition will be limited to 3 minutes tonight. As I call your name, please step to the podium, state your name and address. And the first citizen signed up to speak is Zach Grimack. After that will be Miss Angela Risk.
Hello, my name is Zach Grimick. My address is 1035 Hephzibah Church Road. So thank you, Chairman Brown and fellow commissioners, for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Zach Grimick, and I am the Senior Project Geologist for Piedmont Lithium. I have a background in mineral exploration, which has included resources such as platinum, gold, and now lithium. I am here today to explain the geologic importance of the inner Piedmont region and what makes this area so unique. The Carolina Lithium Project is located in a small sliver of land that lies geologically between two different terrains or layers of the historic Appalachian Mountains. This small sliver, known as the Kings Mountain terrain, hosts what we call the Tin Spodumene Belt. The Tin Spodumene Belt stretches 30 miles from just east of Lincolnton to just south of the Kings Mountain and can be 1.5 miles wide. However, its width can vary. The belt was first formally recognized by the United States Geological Survey in 1942, where it was determined to be a single feature. This was done through linking of multiple small mines and mineral occurrences, primarily of tin, which date back to the 1800s. Since then, it has been mined for other resources such as feldspar, mica, and more recently, lithium. Within the Tin Spodumene Belt, veins of lithium-rich magma were injected into the rock. This process occurs at a depth of several miles in the core of large mountain systems such as the historic Appalachian Mountains and the modern-day Himalayan mountains. These veins contain coarse-grained granite, and normal granite consists of three main minerals: feldspar, quartz, and mica. But in the Tin Spodumene Belt, there is an additional lithium-bearing mineral called spodumene. Spodumene is the most concentrated form of lithium that can occur naturally in the Earth's crust, with abundances up to 8.03% Li2O. These veins not only contain lithium, but other resources that were still and can be mined, such as feldspar for ceramics, quartz for glass and countertops, and mica for paints and cosmetics. It is estimated that there are 375 million tons of spodumene ore across the entire belt. This amount of resource puts this belt into one of the largest known reserves identified globally, and is the largest that has been found in North America to date. A resource of this magnitude cannot be found elsewhere in such abundances and concentrations. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to explain the geologic importance of the Tin Spodumene Belt.
Miss Angela Risk, and next will be Pratt Ray.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Angela Risk. I am a North Carolina native and have lived in Gaston County for the last 22 years. My address is 64 Bowen Drive in Belmont, North Carolina. I know that several people have spoken out against our company and our proposed project over the last several months. And while they absolutely have the right to do that, I have a difference of an opinion and have positive things to say about our company and the people that work there. I joined Piedmont about 4 months ago in October of 2021, and I work as the Director of Financial Reporting. When I joined, I wasn't looking for a new job. I was very happy at my previous employer, and I worked in Charlotte, like most of my colleagues who come out of public accounting do, because it is very difficult, if not impossible, to find a job with a public company here or anywhere outside of Mecklenburg County. When the opportunity to join Piedmont presented itself, I did a significant amount of research on the company, the directors and the executives, to make sure that this was a good company to work for. Some of that research included watching a lot of these meetings that have been recorded over the last several months and hearing numerous complaints by my fellow Gaston County residents. And I actually went and researched those complaints when I was looking at joining Piedmont. I looked at the concerns that they had, the red flags that they brought up, and came to the conclusion after all of my thorough research that Piedmont's proposal would actually be good for my county and the surrounding areas and would be a great company to work for. So I joined Piedmont, and now I get to work for a public company and don't have to drive to Mecklenburg County to do so. As a publicly traded company in the U.S., we have to follow extremely strict guidelines when it comes to our financial reporting. Accuracy, honesty, and transparency are non-negotiable. In my time here, I have found that people I work with bring those same qualities to their jobs, no matter what department they work in, each and every day. We have a great team. We're committed to our jobs, we're committed to our families, we're committed to doing the right thing. And we are from around here. We want to create jobs for more people who are from around here and want to stay here and work close to home and remain part of this community and give back to it in different ways. As I said, I'm in finance. I'm not an engineer or a geologist or a scientist, but I see every day the attention to detail that we give every aspect of this proposed project when it comes to safety of the community, the safety of our teammates, and the safety of the environment. We work in a highly regulated industry, and we welcome those regulations and the scrutiny that comes with them, because that's how it should be. And I may not change anyone's mind about who is against us. I just want them to see that we are real people that work for this company.
Thank you, Ms. Riss.
You're welcome.
Mr. Pratt Ray.
Hi, I'm Pratt Ray. I live on 3455 Old Knobbly Oak Drive in Gastonia, North Carolina. Thank you, Chairman Brown and the fellow commissioners, for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm the production manager for Piedmont Lithium. I was born and raised in the Carolinas. I currently live in Gaston County. In 2014, I couldn't find work in the Carolinas and was forced to sell my family farm to relocate to Louisiana, where I found work. My family and I were there for just over 6 years when I was hired by Piedmont Lithium and was brought back home. I graduated from Blacksburg High School in 1983 and started my lithium journey with Gulf Resources, later bought by FMC and now Livent. I have 30-plus years experience in processing lithium from hard rock ore and brines to make lithium hydroxide. Some of the jobs that we'll have available at Piedmont Lithium hydroxide plants are control room supervisor, operators, relief operators, production helpers, boiler and water treatment operators. This plant will operate 24/7, so we'll have a 12-hour rotating shift. Most manufacturing companies do nowadays. I've worked this schedule for many years, and I understand the importance of work-life balance, and I can assure you that I've put together a very good schedule that these employees will have a good work-life balance. Further jobs are shipping and receiving warehouse workers, mechanics, and electricians, and they'll be on an 8-hour schedule. None of these positions require degrees. However, we are working with our partners in the community to provide some level of training, so when the folks get hired, they'll be trained to do their jobs. Piedmont will provide good paying jobs with benefits and opportunities for promotion in our plant. Years ago, 100% of the lithium operating was done in the plant floor. Now 90% of the time the operator's day will be consisted of staying in a control room and operating and running the plant from a control room setting with monitors on the wall and cameras to monitor the certain equipment. We'll have relief operators walking through the plant and reporting if anything looks abnormal in the process. I'm very excited about the career opportunities the people in Gaston County and surrounding areas will have in the lithium industry. And I thank you for this opportunity for sharing that.
Thank you, sir. The next item will be presentations. Our next presentation tonight will be on the Community Investment Fund update and debt affordability model. I will now call on Mr. Doug Carter, the Public Finance Advisor at DEC Associates. But before that, I want to go to Dr. Eagle for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While Doug's coming forward, you do have a copy of his presentation there at your seat. You received it via email earlier this week. He is going to give you a primer of sorts in anticipation of February 22nd when we're together for our strategy session. This is an update on our debt model. This is a snapshot in time. We've been working on this for several months now in anticipation of the budget process. But he is going to provide some background, bring you up to speed on where we are today, We will continue working toward the conversation that you all will have on the 22nd. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Doug. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager. Mr. Chairman, members of the County Commission, thank you. It was almost a year ago that we were here last year, and we really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you about a subject that's obviously important to you because you want to talk about it. And you've done many things to put it into place, which is part of what we will address. I'm here tonight with two of my business partners, Andrew Carter and Jeremy Carter. And yes, we are related. Honesty is always the best policy. Let me start with this and talk to you a little bit about what we're hoping to do today. First, we're going to just review and update you with respect to decisions you're going to make in the future, upcoming in February, and then on further in your budget decisions. You've made a number of decisions since 2019 in a financial planning sense. And these decisions, at least in our opinion, have moved Gaston to the highest level of county planning that you can have. And I'll mention that again later just to give you an example of what that means and how that happens. The Community Investment Fund is a fund that you have established, I believe, in the budget just after 2019. And that fund, together with a debt affordability analysis and looking at how that impacts on your credit rating, has been a real charge of what happens within your overall planning, especially for the capital side of what you do. There's an update of county financial policies. We'll talk about that in just a minute. You'll see more of that coming in February. There's a debt affordability model that was mentioned earlier. We'll talk a little about that, and Andrew will give you some details about your own specific affordability model. And then we want to talk to you about some future strategic decisions that may well need to be made over the next several months as you move forward in your planning cycle. And then, of course, we're here to answer your questions. I'm not going to go over every point here, but I think the important thing about planning when we think about it is to say that it is a roadmap. I heard that in a course I took right after I got out of college many years ago about road mapping, and I think we all understood that then because we all had a road map, didn't we? It's that piece of paper that got us places. And I think it greatly provides a road map and a way to evaluate your current policies, how you work. It provides for achievement objectives and how you measure that achievement. It gives you tools to match your needs with your priorities. And it also, in many ways, provides a great method for you to improve the cost efficiency of the service delivery that you have. I think all of us, and especially those of you who are elected officials, look towards delivering a sound service at an efficient cost, and certainly planning is a big part of that. And then the other thing that I think is especially important for you guys is there is at least an annual review process so that you again look at what you've done before, how you might need to make changes now to get back to your future objectives. So planning is not a static process. It is a continuing and ongoing one. Now, what has happened since 2019 that are the drivers for Gaston County to move to this higher level of planning? First and foremost is growth and the maintenance of your existing assets. You know, driving over here today, I'm just amazed at how much activity you see off of I-85. It just seems like there's a lot going on, from the hospital at the very beginning to a lot of other land sites that appear to be being improved, and that certainly, at least for me, a finance guy, says something's coming good from an economic perspective on those development sites. Planning helps you in that growth and economic development and is a way to help you look at how can we provide resources to be an aid to economic development throughout the county. You've had a management focus strongly on planning and the cost of service delivery, and I really give it to your staff. We have the benefit of working with many clients in North Carolina, the biggest down to some of the smallest, and your staff certainly is very laser focused. When we come here to have meetings, we're in a room with many of your senior staff members who take a great deal of interest. And so I just think that's a very big positive for you. Certainly another driver was the ability to plan for the longer term, especially on the capital side, because all of us in North Carolina, as one of the top growth states, are going to have those capital needs. They're inevitable. We're going to talk about ratings in a minute, and I used to think ratings are only established on the less you do because that's the less debt or the less money you spend on capital. Actually, the more informed you are and the more you stay up to date is the real driver on decision makings there. And then, of course, it helps you set a stage for improving credit standing. We're going to talk about that for just a second. And for all of us who know and love, and I worked for them for many years, the North Carolina Local Government Commission, they really like this. If you guys had a chance to watch their monthly meetings, they occur every Tuesday at 1:30, you would be amazed at the diversity of what goes on in the state between units that have very deep needs compared to those that are moving ahead in a different direction. So there's a great deal of diversity in what goes on in this state as well. By establishing the CIF, and you're going to see the mechanics of it in a minute, you set forth specific dedicated revenues. And I will say this, and you heard it in earlier presentations, so I'll do it quickly. Counties in particular, more than cities, and I never really fully understood why, tended to fund everything out of the general fund. And so basically everything flowed out of the general fund. And so if you had times in years where capital expenditures were higher and then the next year they were lower, there was no way to say we've had movement in that way, and so we've been moving resources from one place to the other. By the use of a CIF, you set aside what is capital and what is operating. And for those of us like me, and I presume many of us in this room that see much of the private model for operating, they tend to be heavily into the capital formation side together with how do we pay for those things. So you have moved equally in that direction of setting aside what is operating as what is capital. It also has everything in one place. You go there and say, this is what we spent, whether we borrowed it, got a grant, paid for it out of our savings, or any other way you got the money, it's all in one place. And within that CIF, it gives you the method to fund your CIP and provides a way for you to look at debt affordability. There's also an update, the decision made in 2019 to update your financial policies. And you're going to hear a lot about that soon. We have been asked by the county to look at certain portions of those policies, and I feel really good about the directions that those are headed in. They're comprehensive and they cover more than one thing, which is a good thing. And then finally, you've decided and looked at, as we've talked to you before, about looking at most cost-effective debt-raising tools. And one of those is another private sector method that I'm particularly fond of, is to use the potential use of construction period borrowing. You know, it's pretty interesting that oftentimes we borrow permanently for facilities we can't use for years. And so it really makes sense that once you use the facility, you pay for it then by the principal amortization. So that's a very creative tool to use that we've been talking about. And then we're going to look at debt modes, the kind of debt, GO, limited obligation bonds, other borrowing methods, what seems to work best in that particular circumstance. So there's a lot of focus on that as well. Mr. Chairman, if I'm going too fast or too slow, tell me. I know that we've got a time limit. So we wanted to talk just a little bit about ratings, and we've talked with you about this before, but it's kind of easy to forget because there's a lot of percentages and numbers and things. And so the first is we're going to use Moody's. That's not a favoritism. It's just Moody's has been around the longest. They have deeply entrenched and developed policies on how they do ratings. And they look at 4 specific areas. Economy, that's 30% of your rating. Your internal finances, 30% of the rating. Your management, 20% of the rating. And then debt and pensions, they put pensions in with debt, and that's 20%. And so as you can see by those 4 criteria, you really only control 70% of them. Other than a county like Gaston that can say we've done things to aid economic development, you have some overriding impact on the economy, but ultimately those decisions are made in the private sector primarily. So 70% is what you need and do focus on. There are 4 categories of ratings that I'm going to talk to you about. There's triple B. If you hear anything below triple B, it is an investment grade, and so you can't get a lot of people to buy it. There are a number of cities and counties in this country that have below triple B. I won't call any of their names. They wouldn't want to be a model that you would like to follow. There is the A rating, which is a very sound and well-known rating. There's a double A rating, and then there's the highest triple A. I want to say something because your staff, as well as yourselves, I'm sure, are focused on getting the highest rating you can get. There's something that since I spent a lot of time in government and then came to this side of the business, that over time we have coined as the management AAA. Because North Carolina is so well known for management and good management and legal management, honest management, and long-term management. A lot of North Carolina AAAs do not, on a metrics chart that they use, calculate to triple. But they get it because of what's been demonstrated, not only by decisions made at the management level, but really in a larger sense, decisions that have been made at a policy level. And how have those policy level decisions worked together with the management decisions down the line? How long have they been in place? How consistent have they been? And then really importantly, how have they changed to meet current occurrences of current times and estimated changes for the future? We'll talk about a little bit more about that later. The other thing that you look at in rating is your locational strengths and how you manage to them. I live in the great state of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, but I was raised in Iredell County. And Iredell County is very much a part of this economic megalopolis as it's known, just as this is a great part of it. And so how you see yourselves and operate within this large metropolitan area. I may have told you this the last time. If I did, forgive me. The newest megalopolis, known as a term throughout our nation, is the one that goes from Charlotte to Raleigh, the I-85 megalopolis. It now has a bit over 7 million people of the approximately 10.5 million people, getting close to 11, that live in North Carolina. In 30 years, that 7 to 7.5 million people is estimated to be 11.5, approaching 12. So change is coming. And how you are located within that change system is very important as rating people look at you. It's also important that you identify sources and how you fund them, which is why your CIF is a big old gold check mark like we all used to get when we were in kindergarten. And then how sound is the county capital plan meet needs and identify them? I mean, folks, we have to be honest. A capital plan can never be fully funded, right? You have to have a plan, you have to have priorities, but you need to identify. And that's what a really good plan does. And then finally, it's what I call the buy-in. To the extent that we can have staff as well as the elected and policy decisions having a buy-in on these things, then we're obviously moving in the right direction. I'm going to show you this quickly. We've looked at it. The Community Investment Fund is a fund that takes inflows and makes outflows. And as I said earlier, it takes all of the revenues that you dedicate. There are general fund contributions, There are school sales taxes that are specifically allocated to school purposes. You have lottery money. There are other sources and certain miscellaneous revenues that you have flowing into that fund. And out of that is debt service. You got to pay that first, right? And then how you manage your general government pay-go, maintenance. How does school pay-go work? How do we fund that? How do we keep technology? And then ultimately, we hope there's more flowing in than going out, and we can create some new capacity. Inside the CIF, because it has revenues coming in and dollars going out, you can actually calculate your affordability. It's kind of like your family budget when you're dying to buy a new car and you go by and find out what the payment's going to be and figure out how you make all that work within your other government or your monthly budget. Well, your governmental budget is essentially the same way. The mechanics of the debt model say we take projected revenues, because we're projecting into the future on affordability, projected expenses, and then there are any number of factors inside that model that can impact it. Do projects move more slowly? Is the actual debt cost lower than what we estimated? Are the revenues higher? How rapid is your debt reduction? And there are many other factors that do that, and then out of that flows capacity. I will say to you, and it may sound not exactly right, while we are very focused on interest rates, timing is the real key on how an affordability model works. It's when you do it as much as how much you pay in interest. So that's the other thing I'll give your staff kudos for. They're looking heavily at timing. How do you make the timing work? Now with that, I'm going to ask Andrew to come up and we're going to show you the summary page of your model. It consists of many, many pages, but he's going to show you a summary of what your current debt model projects as your debt affordability into the next 12 or so years. And then I'll be back up to kind of wind up and be ready for your questions.
Thank you again for having us here today. Very happy to be here and discuss this. Doug has, of course, given me the fun part in discussing all the numbers that you have before you, which is oftentimes the most important part. But I know there's a lot of numbers on this page. I won't be going through all of them, but kind of giving the big overview of what this model says. And what I would start off with is we believe this to be a healthy and accomplishable model, and the assumptions that we have here on these pages. In any model, as you're projecting anything out into the future, we want to be pretty conservative in growth rates, in interest rates, and timings, and sizes. So we oftentimes tend to, on the revenue side, oftentimes when you're doing budgets and such, to not do a whole lot of high growth on the revenue side. And on the expenditure side, we tend to have higher than current interest rate assumptions in there, as well as going to the higher end of what a project may cost. And that way we can kind of meet in the middle on the model to be very confident that the revenues and assumptions and expenditures that we have in the model are accomplishable and can be met. So as you'll see here, we start, of course, with revenues. That's the money that's coming in, as Doug said. That's the general fund portion. That's sales tax. That is school sales tax, as well as lottery and some other sources. So you'll see those are the sources.
Trying to find it, sorry. Look how good I am on technology.
It's not on the.
It's not on here.
If you're looking at this sheet, we
Can do it from there.
We have it up here, but
Perfect.
that helps you.
So those are our revenue sources, and as Doug said, we track and make sure that no sales tax dollars that are dedicated to schools go to any other but school uses. And so then we get into the expenditure side, and the first thing we have to do is make sure you can pay for the currently issued debt that the county already has incurred. And so that's what that first column is those are the resources that y'all have already incurred in debt. It also includes, I'll say, a reservation of equipment and technology money that's in there. So you'll see that it goes to a kind of a consistent number down towards the bottom. We are reserving space for some of the expenses that we don't quite know yet, but we do have 5 and 10-year averages of what have been spent. So we're reserving space for equipment, technology, police cars, fire trucks, that type of, kind of 5-year borrowings that you might do every other year. So we do have reservation for that. You'll also see in the PAYGO column, there's about $6 to $7 million a year in annual PAYGO. That is in this program already. It also, you'll see the number grows. We have a growth factor for PAYGO because, as we know, projects get more expensive as we go into the future. So we wanted to put a growth factor on that so that the $6 million today is really $8 million 10 years from now, but buys about the same amount of stuff. So we wanted to reserve that for you. So those are 2 of the reservations in this model before we even talk about adding anything new. So the new stuff. As a note, I don't need to tell and remind you, but in 2018, there was $250 million voted for the GOs for schools. Y'all have issued $60 million of that already through a GO bond issuance in 2018. And so there's $190 million of that authorization for GO of school money still out there remaining to be issued for the schools. So the first program was, of course, how do we program in that GO that y'all can afford with your given resources, and how fast can we get it to the schools? Might be more difficult to issue all $190 million that is remaining at one time. Might be difficult to spend that money in a reasonable time period. So we, in consultation with staff and spending schedules, we have identified of about 3 different issuances of GO money to get the schools before the authorization is out in 2028. So we have in 2022, later this year, in the fall time period, we'd be issuing about $60 million for the schools. That is after the first $60 million that was issued in 2018. So this will be a new pot of money to do some new projects with. The next issuance would be in 2024 for about $75 million in what we would consider general government projects. We call these LOBs on here, but that's a code word for general government projects. And at this point in time, I don't believe there's a specific project that has necessarily been identified, but we have shown in this model that in 2024, this board would have approximately $75 million to spend if they wanted to. The next issuance would be in 2025 for more GO school money at about $70 million. So approximately 3 years after we issue the $60 million, they get another $70 to start spending. And then we would do the last takeout of the GO money, the last $60 million remaining of the $190 in 2028. So they would get that last tranche of money about 3 years after the next $70 million, and that would close out the full $190 million of the voted GOs, or sorry, the $250 million of the GOs that were voted in 2018. So that gets you the money in the time period that's authorized and is affordable within the model. So those are really your spending priorities. Doug mentioned, and you probably see more than one column here for some of the spending, This first one, 2022, $60 million GO draw program interest. Doug mentioned that part of the strategy here is using a private sector strategy of construction period financing. It's short-term, interest-only, construction period financing of which you construct the projects, and then at the end, we come and fix it out for a long-term financing, a 20-year financing, once the projects are done in the ground and you're able to occupy them. This does a number of different things. It helps prevent borrowing more money than you need up front and taking too long to spend it, and it's sitting in the bank. You're paying interest on it and not earning much in the bank. It also allows us to, maybe they don't spend all $60 million in that time period. Well, then we're only fixing out the actual dollars that were actually spent on projects rather than front-loading the spending. So you'll see how the private sector uses to be more efficient in not fixing out a lot of money for long-term at higher interest rates. So that's what's in this particular model. As I said, it gets you the $190 million in GO school money and about $75 million in general government projects that you all can decide how to spend. And I think that's all I've got on the model.
Yeah, let me just make a few comments related to that. Remember we said earlier, every year you'll be part of this and look at it again? Just expect next year that this will look a little bit different because we'll know more about timing. I think the other thing that we shouldn't infer from here, especially as we look at the general obligation money that's spent for schools, that this is meant to be a governor on what is done. It's meant to be an estimate. And so if the expenditures are more rapid, then we'll look at those expenditures within the model and say, how does this impact the model going forward? Obviously, the faster we spend, the more capacity it takes. So we tried to be reasonable in working with staff and looking at, I just don't want anybody to think that that is the exact number at the exact time. It's the best estimate that's currently had, all estimates to be subject to change in the annual planning process, or before, particularly if you as a body see something you want done before that. So it allows that sort of intrinsic process of having staff and elected officials go in and out of this financial model and see what the timing and actual projects are. I would say to you on the 75 million in capacity you have, you'll be hearing a lot more about that when you come to your capital budget time, which will be a little later than February, and we'll be talking more through about that.
Yeah,
Okay?
as Doug said, it's a living document. This is not, this is just where it is right now. As you'll see in the top right-hand corner, we're already up to version 9. Since we've been working over the past year, that's probably more than that. There's been versions.
There's some A, Bs, and
7, A, B,
Cs
C, and
of-
D as we look at all different types of options. So, you know, that's why this document is a great planning tool, because you can look at all kinds of different scenarios. And as real life world things come in, we put those in, and that of
Right.
course changes the,
Right.
the math a little bit.
We have sat with your staff several times and said, what if we do this? You got good technology in your conference rooms, and 2 minutes later, you know what the what if is. So that's a really good part of this planning tool. Let me just talk a little bit about strategic decisions that need to be made that y'all have shown a predilection to do, and I'm sure you'll continue to do as you move along. I was raised, this was one of my dad's big phrases of stay the course. I just think you've stayed the course on this, and I see an ability and a need to do that as you go forward, and a willingness to have done that as we talk about this. Andrew mentioned a fall issuance for GeoDraw notes. Your staff is working actively with school board folks to look at timing, size. We've had an estimate that could change. The spring CIP will look at establishing of timing of future projects outside the school side. Now, there is a potential, because I know there's some big projects in the works, that we might see the need for more revenues in order to make this work. And so we've just laid out for you some thought processes, which you'll discuss in more detail later once the CIP is done, the timing is down, the dollar estimates are in. One of those might be increasing the general fund transfer to the CIF. There was some capacity needs potentially for that. There'll be detailed discussions on that, what that means, how it impacts, that sort of thing. We'll want to maintain the fund balances inside the CIF. When you saw down the right hand of the column you had, it showed you the dynamic part of having a fund balance, because you saw several years of red where the revenues were not as large as the expenditures, but you had accumulated money to be able to levelize the tax and revenue impacts. And so we'll have a policy that you'll be talking about soon on how much we want to keep in that fund balance. And so we'll want to look at, as we look at funding that needs that may come, making sure we stay in compliance with keeping our fund balance. We've looked really hard at the sales tax, especially sales taxes oriented toward school purposes, which y'all are well aware of. We've had dramatic changes in sales tax that have come about because of COVID, growth, how people buy things. And we're watching particularly close, particularly with your staff, to say, are the growth that we've seen and y'all have seen, are they permanent? Will they shift to themselves? We want to be very prudent about looking at how will our revenues be impacted as COVID goes away, and let's just all hope that it's soon. And then we'll also continue to look at one-time revenues because they can be out there. And a one-time revenue coming into this model can add to the fund balance, and here again adds very much capability to look at future expenditures and levelize how you issue the debt. So, and then finally, and I've said it several times, but you're going to get bored to death over this, or you may ask lots of questions. Every year you're going to hear this. Every year you're going to get to talk through what happens next.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one point of clarification on this last slide. Doug used the phrase increased revenue. He's speaking to the mechanics of the model and the way we construct the model. He's not talking about tax rates. So just for purposes of clarifications, it's how we establish the model, the funds within, et cetera.
Exactly.
If he meant that, he wouldn't still be standing there.
That's true.
Any questions from
also
the board
true.
for Mr. Carter? I just have one, I guess. I just want to, what do we need to do as a board for policy standpoint to get a AAA bond rating, to increase our debt capacity, and to be prepared for our growth? What would you suggest off this? And maybe if you wanted to send that to Dr. Eagle, if that helps you to, but that's
Sure.
just what we're trying to find is what we're looking
Okay.
for.
I'd be happy to do that, but let me just say a couple things quick. Stay the course, back to that one. Continuity. Look at the three factors that you control: your finances, your management, your debt and pensions, and establish really good policies on retention of fund balances, on retention of cash flow needs to meet the cash flows of the county, and then a really strong emphasis on your CIP. Those are coming from here now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
One follow-up comment, if I may. Leading into your strategy session on the 22nd, we will spend some dedicated time hearing from you all about your priorities, because we want to start talking about the list of projects that need to be in the CIP. We have our current list. I have information coming in from the departments based on their perspective on the needs, so that will be one component. In addition to that, we will do a reval update in terms of the timeline for that. And we'll also spend some time digging further into the model. Doug will be back with us on the 22nd for that strategy session. So I just wanted to give you that overview of the agenda for that day that fits directly into this conversation. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your presentation. Are any other matters need to come before this board at this time? Commissioner Worley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to take a moment to send a congratulations out to our Gaston County's very own Harold Varner III, who won the Saudi International Golf Tournament and in Saudi Arabia this past Sunday. Harold is a graduate of Forest View High School and East Carolina University, but I just think that he made everyone in Gaston County very proud that he won that golf tournament over the weekend. So I'd just like to say that as a point of privilege. Thank you.
Any other matters? Seeing none, Rodney, you and Jonathan come in here. Come in, hurry up. Walk in here. If you guys don't know, February 15th is School Resource Officer Day, and these two gentlemen are part of our school resource system that we have throughout the county. So just want to thank you guys for coming in and what you do and what you mean for our community as that. So happy School Resource Officer Day on the 15th. The board will hold its annual planning session on Tuesday, February 22nd at the Gaston County Administration Building, Conference Room 3A at 3 p.m. That is the last agenda item I have. Just want to do the script here. This concludes our work session for tonight. Our next regular meeting is Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, 6 p.m. here in the Harley B. Gaston Forum in the courthouse. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please direct your comments to our telephone, our clerk, Donna S. Buff, at 704-866-3196. Happy Valentine's to all of you. Moo moo buckaroo, and good night, Gaston.